Copenhagen. Let's get underway. Welcome, my friends, to the quarterfinals of GP Copenhagen 2015. The format is modern, and you are in the booth with Riley Knight and the Pro Tour champion, Simon Gertzen. Simon, we're about to get underway. We have blue-white merfolk in the hands of Christoffer Larsen on the left, and on the right of your screen, Thiago Rodrigues playing Grixis Control. You've been very big on the card Coligan's Command this weekend, Simon, and unsurprisingly, 4 decks in the top 8 featuring the card, although very different archetypes.
Yes, and the Grixis Control deck makes really good use of another versatile removal spell, another versatile answer to the threats of the format, and with 4 Snapcaster Mage, you have the ability to not only flash it back, but also to return your Snapcaster Mages for some insane value.
And this is, I think, why we've seen the success of the Grixis colours this weekend is because of that interaction between Coligan's Command and Snapcaster Mage. Coligan's Command are more or less built-in 2-for-1 in many cases, but when you're flashing it back from the graveyard, oh my goodness, you're crowned the mayor of Value Town immediately. Blue-White Merfolk, the order of the day for Christoffer Larsen on the left-hand side of your screen. A deck that it's been around, Simon. It's seen some sort of fringe success in the format, but today, getting all the way to the top 8.
Merfolk was always a deck in Modern. It's just it just wasn't much more than at most tier 2 status, and now we have 2 people making the top 8 here. I have to say that surprised me quite a bit when I saw Christoffer Larsen be undefeated. I know how good of a player he is, but when I saw his deck, like blue-white lands, Mutavault, and a bunch of Merfolk creatures, I was not expecting that.
Well, Christoffer Larsen getting off to more or less the ideal start here with an Ether Vial. That's going to save him a fair whack of mana as we head into this game here. But I can tell you now, Larsen has made some interesting choices when putting together this deck. Some stuff that you might not necessarily expect, including his one drop of choice, which is Kozzy's Trickster. Traditionally, we're expecting Curse Catcher, but Kozzy's Trickster here is a 1/1 that grows whenever an opponent shuffles their library. An interesting choice here, Simon.
Yes, and there's this argument by Merfolk players, which is that you don't really want to be sacrificing your 1-drop anyway. If you consider Merfolk a deck that just basically plays a bunch of pack rats, when you think about it, because they will all grow every single turn, thanks to all the lords in the deck, then sacrificing the first pack rat, the first Curse Catcher, is actually detrimental to your game plan.
Serum Vision's the follow-up turn 2 play for Rodrigues after we see one of 2 spell skites from Larsen's deck being deployed, and there is Kozzy's Trickster, as we've mentioned. Another interesting choice from Larsen is Unified Will, a counter spell that counters a spell if you control more creatures than your opponent. And against much of the field, that's going to be the case when you're flooding the board with cheap creatures.
And an incredible answer to a lot of the more unfair decks in the format.
Yeah.
So if you are thinking about Amulet Bloom or Tron, the condition is almost always going to be satisfied.
Perhaps not at its best against Lingering Souls, but still a very solid choice here. Grixis Control, however, in the hands of Thiago Rodrigues, a list that many people might be more familiar with, an innovation of Patrick Chapin's, of course, recently. But a few interesting things going on in there, Simon.
Yeah, the full 4 Terminate, a couple of removal spells, nothing out of the ordinary, only 3 Cryptic Commands, and yeah, just what you would expect. 2 Tasigur, the Golden Fang, and 3 Gurmag Angler. Gurmag Angler, in a sense, the more popular choice this weekend because of the extra point of power and the pressure that puts on the opponent.
Mirror Regeries powered up the Kozzy's Trickster to get in for 2 against Rodrigues. Rodrigues checks that card very quickly. It's a 2/2 for 3. It's known in the business as a Grey Ogre. However, it gives all Merfolk creatures you control +1/+1. In addition to that, whenever you cast a Merfolk creature spell, you can tap or untap a permanent. So Rodrigues plays his 4th land and ships the turn. Ether Vial ticking up to 3. And here's a Ghost Quarter, one of the 4 Ghost Quarters that Larsen is playing in his deck. Mana base very streamlined. 4 Ghost Quarter, 4 Mutavault, 2 Flooded Strand, 4 Wonderwine Hub, 4 Seachrome Coast, 1 Hallowed Fountain, accompanying 3 islands. As we see an attack for 4 here. But a Lightning Bolt is going to take care of the Regery unless Larsen has something to say about it.
Thiago Rodrigues not really a deck that's weak to Ghost Quarter. He has a mountain, a swamp, and 3 islands in his deck. So I wouldn't expect that to play a big role.
So Rodrigues firing off a Lightning Bolt at the Regery, however it's redirected at the Spell's Guide. So Larsen here with the choice to either sacrifice the Regery or the Spell's Guide in the face of this flashback Lightning Bolt. And it looks like it's the Spell's Guide that's going to eat it here. So that Lightning Bolt, of course, having been cast from the graveyard, should be exiled. Make sure that that's taken care of. Because, of course, the flashback ability from Snapcaster Mage removing the instant from the graveyard after it's been cast.
Powerful follow-up here by Larsen, who was able to flash in another Regery, and that allowed his Cozy Trickster to survive, and he was able to tap out for Master of Waves. So he has so much power on the battlefield now. Thiago would need a Damnation here, but he doesn't play any in his main deck.
No, only a single copy of the Wrath appearing in the 75. Christoffer Larsen with doing more or less exactly what this deck wants to do. Just overload the board with threats, and with Rodrigues, as you mentioned, without a sweeper here.
I mean, this was just a crazy turn. Did Larsen opt or forget to untap permanents when he cast the Master of Waves? Can't tell if there could have been some untaps, but I mean, his board is just absurdly powerful. This is not what the control deck is built for. You are not a deck to come back from this kind of situation. You are a deck built to never let this kind of situation happen.
It's going to be very difficult for Rodrigues to deal with that Master of Waves, of course, as well. I mean, there aren't a whole lot of removal spells in his deck that don't feature red. Terminate is a huge liability against Master of Waves, as is Lightning Bolt.
Yep, Anger of the Gods is still going to be good after sideboarding, but for game 1, there's almost nothing that Thiago can do here. Even a Path to Exile to add insult to injury.
Rubbing salt into the wound here for Rodrigues. Looks like that Gurmag Angler is getting out of here. And Rodrigues says, yes, indeed, that's enough. So the Merfolk Menace takes out game number 1. Christoffer Larsen has had a really, really good day so far, and his success continues in the top 8, taking out the first game of our quarterfinals. Let's have a look at the sideboard, Simon, see what these guys are cooking with here, as the deck lists are distributed to the players just as they have been to us. I'm going to go through Larsen's options here. He's got 2 extra copies of Spell's Guide, so that's 4 within the whole 75. 4 Stony Silence. A lot of respect for the Affinity Menace there. Hibernation, a card that returns all green permanents to their owner's hands. Rest in Peace, Kentucky, War's Wage, and 4 Swan Song as well. I'm interested to see the choices that he makes here. Rest in Peace, potentially an option to shut down Snapcaster Mage, to turn off the Delve synergy with things like Thought Scour, stuff like that. But overall, what are your thoughts, Simon?
I completely agree that the 2 Rest in Peace are the easiest cards to include, and then it gets a bit tricky. You already have 2 Spell's Guide, and of course it's nice to protect your lords. On the other hand, you do make Kolaghan's Command quite a bit more powerful if you have artifacts in play in addition to creatures. Now, the Swan Song to me looks like a card that he would want against combo decks and not control decks.
This is my thought as well. I think Swan Song is a little bit of a liability against a control deck that may actually make real use of the 2/2, not necessarily all in on attempting to manufacture a particular board state. But I know what you mean about the spell skites coming in. Already Larsen a little bit cold to Colligan's command, relying on Ethervile as he does. However, what is his opponent going to be cooking with here?
Yes, and this is the interesting part. Rodrigues has Dispels, Fulminator Mages, a spell skill of his own, the Damnation that we talked about, but also 2 Anger of the Gods as potential mass removal. Then there is Karanos, God of Storms, 2 Vendilion Click, a Negate, and an Engineered Explosives. So after sideboarding, Rodrigues has up to 4 mass removal spells if you count the Engineered Explosives as one of them. And he might want to be a bit more proactive after sideboarding, now that he also knows that Rest in Peace is an option for his opponent. I'm not entirely sure what he's going to bring in, because blocking is not something he can rely on. So if he goes for more creatures, then the Island Walk of Larsen's Merfolks are going to be a big issue.
That's right. Relying on blue mana as Rodrigues does is something of a liability when facing down Merfolk creatures. We do have a result from one of our other quarterfinals. On table 3, we have Nikinski also playing a Merfolk deck. He's playing just mono blue, playing against the modern version of Death and Taxes we discussed earlier. And it is the Merfolk deck that has taken game 1 there as well. So it looks like the fish are in it to win it.
Mono blue Merfolk is in a prime position against Death and Taxes, because the whole mana denial plan does not work against Merfolk. You're playing a deck that has a super good mana base, man lands, but also Ethervile. So there's just no locking you out.
And you're hoping that cards like Leon and Arbiter and that sort of stuff are going to get value, but against Merfolk, really, Merfolk in a very good position against Death and Taxes.
So looking at this matchup with the knowledge that both players have their sideboards, Rodrigues is going to be preparing for Rest in Peace, whereas Christoffer Larsen might actually bring in some Swan Songs, knowing that they will be able to counter Anger of the Gods and Damnation. And that means that it is actually not all about the Island Walk, but the Island Walk is going to be a critical part of the puzzle here, because that kind of shuts down the disadvantage of the Swan Song.
Not a lot else going on in Rodrigues' sideboard, though. Full 4 copies of Fulminator Mage there. Not exactly where you want to be, despite his opponent having many non-basic lands, of course. But mana denial, as you mentioned, Simon, not in the best position against a Merfolk deck.
I thought about it, but it really only deals with Mutavault, and the price you pay, 3 mana for a 2/2, that's most likely not going to be able to block, I think is too high. It's not what you want to be doing as the control deck. Now, you have mentioned the problem of needing to beat Master of Waves.
Yeah.
And, well,
Anger of the Gods doesn't do it.
Anger of the Gods partly does it.
Partly does it.
If after the Anger there's only a Master of Waves left, I think it has done its job.
But Anger of the Gods, even then, I mean, it's not impossible to envision a board state wherein you have several 4/4s on the battlefield here for the Merfolk deck. And Anger of the Gods, if deployed at the right time, I imagine would be backbreaking. But if we've got a couple of Lords out, if we've got a Mirror Regery out, making sure the creatures are going to survive, I'm not sure.
No, Rodrigues needs a hand that is able to pick off Larsen's threats one by one. If Larsen ever gets to the point where he has 2 or 3 threats on the board, then he's going to be able to pass with all his mana up, and his little disruption, the little disruption that he has, Unified Will and potentially Swan Song, is going to target the big sweepers of Rodrigues.
Another card I bet I wish Rodrigues had a little bit more access to is Cryptic Command here, because Cryptic Command is a card that really shines in this sort of... Well, I mean, Simon Gertzen, where does the card Cryptic Command not shine? But where, in whether you're behind or ahead in a matchup like this, there's nowhere I'd rather be than with Cryptic Command.
It's also a way to either deal with Master of Waves or delay it.
For sure. That's right. Tapping down creatures, removing troublesome permanents for at least a turn, drawing cards and countering spells is exactly where this deck wants to be. But it does come at a cost, of course, and that cost is running so many islands. I know we keep coming back to this, Simon, but I think you made a very good observation when you say that Island Walk is going to be what makes or breaks this matchup.
If I'm Larsen, I might just take out all my Path through Exiles, because I don't want to cast Path on my opponent's creatures anyway. I just want to win with evasive, cheap creatures, and I'm dreading a hand with 2 Path through Exiles after sideboarding. because even though it's a good answer to Tassiger or Gurmak Angler, I'm already bringing in the Rest in Peace to make those basically worthless if the Rest in Peace comes down early enough. And then Path to Exile is really not the card you want to see.
But even if it isn't too late, I mean, if you're spending your 6th and 7th turn to make, I mean, first you've got to survive to it first, and then you've got to draw enough lands, and then after that you're tapping out for one creature, and at that stage of the game, the Merfolk deck should be able to ignore a single 5/5 because they've got 2, 3, 4, 5 creatures.
Yeah, even without my Island Walk, there's Mirror Regery.
Yeah.
This is not a problem.
So I think Rest in Peace really is what Larsen is hoping to see in his opener here, and if we see a turn 2 Rest in Peace, Rodrigues he's got a stiff uphill battle here. He's off to the races, however, so opening things up with a Scalding Tarn. Turn 1 Island. So we may see something like a Thought Scour or a Serum Visions happen here.
The good thing in this matchup for Larsen is that he can afford to draw the Rest in Peace later, and it's still going to have a huge effect on the game. This is not like an Affinity matchup where if you don't have the Stony Silence early enough, you lose. Larsen with a lot of respect for Affinity, by the way, with the 4 Stony Silence and the 2 Katakis.
Larsen starting things off with a Flooded Strand and no play. So we're not seeing Ethervile, we're not seeing Cozy's Trickster just yet.
No, Ethervile is somewhat of a relief, has to be somewhat of a relief for Thiago. Because it's just so hard to keep up with the tempo generated by the Vial.
Larsen finds his single Hallowed Fountain here. One of the draw cards to a deck like Merfolk is the fact that, with, what is it? I mean, a single white card in Path to Exile, and then obviously the sideboard cards as well. You'd think you'd be able to go a bit easier on the mana, but he really isn't mucking around. He's got several duels here. He's got 4 1/1 hub, 4 Seachrome Coast, and then 2 Flooded Strands and a Hallowed Fountain.
Yeah, the cost for these lands in the Merfolk deck is so low that you're actually happy to play them, so that Choke is not a card that locks you out of the game.
Still, I worry about Blood Moon here. Not specifically in this matchup, obviously, but in a more general sense.
Yeah, Blood Moon, I think Larsen can be relatively safe that people will not dare to bring it in against him. If you don't know the deck list, you have to assume that a mono blue deck has no trouble against Blood Moon whatsoever.
I guess that's a good point. Silvergill Adept there, eating a Spell Snare. Rodrigues, I'm sure, happy to deploy the snare in a timely fashion and search up a blood crypt while he's at it.
And this time it's going in Thiago's favor here, with him being able to pick off the first threat. Larsen, no 1-drop, no Aether Vial, that's huge, and also no card advantage generated with the Silvergill Adept.
Sulphur Falls entering the battlefield here. So Larsen knows he doesn't have to worry about an end-of-turn Pestimite or anything else going on there. So must be nice knowing that you're not having to worry about being twinned out at the end of the turn.
Well, Thiago is playing Grixis Control, so there's no...
Yeah, it must be nice not to have to worry about that sort of thing. The Golden Fang joins the party. And it's met with a Spell Skite. Ooh, second Spell Snare there. That's huge.
Just imagine if Larsen had drawn the Aether Vial, and he wouldn't have even cast his 2-drops.
So things looking very good for Thiago here.
Yeah, this is exactly what you want. You have your threat on the board. If you now have another land, and you might just be able to pass the turn, counter again, or generate value with Tassiger. No real fear of anything here.
And a Serum Vision is going to kick things off for Rodrigues. A few more results from the back tables. On table 3, things have been evened up here. Lundqvist has managed to take out game number 2 against Kinski there. So the Merfolk and Death and Taxes are all 1-1. Steve Hatto, however, on table number 2 against Arnold Hockemüller, playing Grixis twin. Hatto on the scape shift plan has managed to get up 1-0 to him. Lord of Atlantis, the latest addition to the battlefield here from Christoffer Larsen. And in comes the unblockable 3-3 Mutavault.
Did Thiago decline to cast his Mana Leak there? Does he have something else to play? Oh, it looks like he just wants to keep it for potential Master of Waves. That's really good. I think he drew the Kolaghan's command that he left on top, so he might be able to go Kolaghan's command, your Lord of Atlantis, and still have Mana Leak mana up.
So Larsen's going to go digging here. He finds Mero Regery. Got Ghost Quarter in hand. 2 copies of it, in fact.
Not a great card in this matchup. It's, if you know that you're only going to use it, there might even be a reason to board on one on the draw, because it's by far your worst land. But of course, you don't want to get too greedy.
Larsen reaches for 3 mana. It looks like it's going to be Mero Regery. See what Rodrigues has to say about that. We could see Mana Leak here. And indeed we do. And he's a second Lord of Atlantis.
Yeah, that's going to prompt the Kolaghan's command.
Of course, it'd be too late for Rodrigues to shock the original Lord of Atlantis out of the way once that Lord arrives, but he's not going to be able to cast Kolaghan's command here because he's just gone and fetched a basic island.
Yeah, that's...
So he must have another card in mind, and it is Snapcaster Mage, targeting Spell Snap. Getting insane value out of his little counter spell there.
Spellsna has been absolutely amazing. And he's not much of a control deck either. He's really pressuring Larsen here.
Larsen's going to have another go here with the Spell Sky at the draw. Ghost Quarter in hand, in addition to what looks like a Swan Song. So they have come in, or at least one.
Yeah, he has. I think Larsen just has enough cards that he doesn't really want to have after sideboarding. No fear.
Attacks for 5. And here we have Spell Sky.
Like I said, I'm not too sure on how many Spell Skies you really want after sideboarding. Because especially with the Kolaghan's command, it's not going to take care of all the removal spells.
Electrolyze going upstairs for Larsen here. We may have some damage redirection going on, however, or some targeting redirection, I should say, going on. And Larsen down to 3.
So Larsen opts not to redirect it to Spellskite. Looks like that.
Well, jumping the Tasigur and going down to 1 here. Rodrigues plays Island and says go. 9 points of damage needed for Larsen to close out this game. Otherwise, we are hitting the sideboards once again. And in the draw step, it is V-Click. It's going to make it very hard for Larsen to get through. And we may see a concession here rather than revealing the Swan Songs that he's brought in. Because I don't see a way out of it. And indeed we do. There we go. So, saving information, not showing his opponent the Swan Song that he'd brought in. Larsen concedes after that V-Click is there to mop up things in his draw step.
No mass removal needed this game at all. Just attacking with Tasigur.
Well, this is the power of these Delve cards that we've seen, Zimon. I mean, this is something that's been a hallmark of Modern in recent times. These Delve creatures coming to the party earlier than they're invited and just smashing face.
But to be honest, the Spell Snares were the key card
Absolute MVPs in that setting there. Yeah, 3 spell snares at 3 different points, taking care of 3 key threats.
And not letting the Merfolk deck get rolling. The Merfolk deck with 1 or 2 creatures in play is not a problem. But if Larsen has all of that on the table, it's a completely different story.
So things all tied up here between these two players, 1-1. We did see one Swansong come in from the board from the blue-white Merfolk deck. How many are you liking here? I'm thinking maybe 1 or 2 at least.
I don't think you bring in 1 only. If you bring them in 2 or 3, sounds like a decent number. It is really dependent on if you are hoping that your main plan is going to be successful. If you are afraid that even the Island Wall might not be something that you can achieve, then it might not be the card that you want.
Of course, we've been talking about Island Walk a fair bit, and one of the cards in Blue-White Merfolk deck is Spreading Seas as a 4 of. So I guess this is for matchups like Jund or Abzan, where you're not having islands come into play naturally on your opponent's side of things, so you're generous enough to give them one.
And it's a very good play after starting off with Either Vial, which will pay for your creatures anyway. I think Larsen did some adjustments for Game 3, which I like because he is going to be on the play. So he might go for a more aggressive approach there, and with less reactive cards.
Interesting to see the V-Clicks come in from the board for Rodrigues. V-Click, a very good Game 2, Game 3 card, I think, in general.
No, it's interesting. Maybe the remands didn't make it. It is only a temporary reprieve against Massive Waves, and the whole Either Vial makes it so awkward. So I can see that being a relatively easy cut. And then the question is, you can take out the Dispel. Countering back, winning counter wars is not how this matchup plays out. And ultimately, Thiago does not have too much to take out otherwise, I think. I like most of his other cards.
Well, players almost in readiness for game number 3 here. Rodrigues and Larsen here fighting to make it through to the semi-finals. And things all tied up at 1-1. Larsen, the picture of relaxed concentration there. A very, very laid-back player with exuding easy confidence. A difficult opponent, Simon.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I don't know Rodrigues too well, but I imagine that sitting across from Larsen at a juncture like this would be a very intimidating thing. Larsen, a man who knows his eggs.
He just oozes confidence. It's and rightfully so. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's also you can tell that he's relaxed. He's having fun while playing really high level Magic. That's not easy to do. Although Thiago is also a very experienced player. He's been traveling the GP circuit.
Opening hands now being consulted by these two sorcerers here. See what they can find. Ooh, Spell Snare in the opener for Rodrigues. Very, very nice one, especially on the draw. And Larsen consulting with the top 10 cards of his library, or it might have even been the top 11, in fact, and he's going to send them back. Oh, there you go, Simon. You mentioned before about the dangers of opening on 2 Path to Exiles. It seems like that's what he may have done here, the Dane.
And at this point, it's all about how do you perceive this matchup and which role do you want to take. I wouldn't have thought that Path to Exile was part of your main plan against Grixis control after sideboarding.
Well, Larsen, I'm sure, hoping that one of the top 6 cards of his library is going to be a Stony Silence, and amongst it, the lands to cast it. Oh, Stony Silence? Probably not for that one. Probably hoping for a Rest in Peace rather than that
turn
one.
Turn 1, Ether Vial, turn 2,
Stony Silence. Mighty. Very, very mighty indeed.
So, Thiago, I think, cannot feel too bad. He's playing a control deck, against the creature deck that relies on synergy and really needs to get a mass of creatures into play. But there are starts by the Merfolk deck, like we've seen in Game 1, that are so difficult to beat.
Really hard to come back from. I mean, the job does become easier for the control deck with cards like Damnation and Anger of the Gods, but still, I think the Merfolk deck is capable of putting up starts that make it very hard to come back from.
Yeah, but it looks like he once again does not have an Either Vial.
Looks like he's got a very land-heavy hand here as well. I see Spellskite amongst it, in addition to Mutavault and Island.
Yeah, he's going to start on Spellskite again, and this is not what you want to do in this matchup.
Larsen rather pessimistically holding out the Spellskite above the table, and it's immediately countered by a Spell Snare. Not much thought going into that decision there from Rodrigues, just snapping it off at the earliest opportunity.
Yes, and doing so fills his graveyard. His opponent doesn't get the Spellskite into play, which makes his bolts awkward. So it's a very good use of his turn one. As you've mentioned, Thiago being on the draw, Spell Snare, the one card that kind of negates that disadvantage.
Thought Scour targeting me, says Rodrigues. Mills a couple of lands. And finds another Thought Scour. Scalding Tarn go. And Larsen finds another land here. So his hand is all lands at this stage. In comes Mutavault for 2.
Larsen mulligan into a hand of double Mutavault Spellskite, which isn't amazing, but it has the tools to put a bunch of pressure on a control deck.
Master of Waves also hiding out in the Dane's hand here. As Rodrigues goes searching for something off the back of his Scalding Tarn.
Rodrigues really wants a duel at this point. He's holding another island and a mountain.
So we may see a Blood Crypt here, or even a Watery Grave perhaps. That's a Steam Vents.
So I assume there has to be a black source in his hand.
And he's wanting to cast Thought Scour here, of course, as well. Snapcaster Serum Visions go to the bin. And was that an Electrolyze to the hand?
Looked like a Watery Grave to me. He has more than enough lands now. Mountain, Watery Grave, Polluted Delta. He's figured out just the right angle so that we can't exactly make out the cards.
Can't quite see it. There's that Polluted Delta you mentioned before, does Zimon?
We're getting a glimpse at his deck there, and you could see the Damnation. I could imagine Thiago only having brought in the Damnation and maybe the Engineered Explosives, but opting not to try for Anger of the Gods.
It is a little bit of a liability, yeah. 2 mana, and here is Snapcaster Mage targeting Serum Visions.
And Larsen can't even punish him with Master of Waves because he only has a Devotion count of 1 if he plays it.
So Rodrigues tapped out with a 2-1 in play. And here's Hallowed Fountain from Christoffer Larsen. So Larsen, as we said, a bit of a dream run for him that came crashing to a halt in round 12 as he lost to another player in the top 8. The other Merfolk player slaying the king atop the hill. But it's interesting to see 2 different Merfolk decks in the top 8 here. We've had a very diverse field. We've had all the mainstays of Modern. We've seen Living End, we've seen Abzan, we've seen Collected Company decks of all stripes. Here's Cozy's Trickster.
Finally a powerful Merfolk to aid Larsen's side.
Especially after 3 fetch lands.
Thiago with his Snapcaster Mage in play. Snapcaster also his Twitter handle, by the way, if you want to follow him. Nowadays, when a when a Grixis control player picks up their graveyard, you can't be sure it's going to be Snapcaster Mage. It might just be Colorgun's command that's coming.
Yeah. Might be a Gurmag Angler as well, as we see one hit the battlefield here. And Rodrigues sends most of his graveyard into the exile zone and makes himself a 5/5 for 1 mana. Ships the turn back to Larsen. Larsen with very little to say about that, draws a Mero Regery. I think we may see the Regery deployed here. Certainly wanting to hold on to that Master of Waves as late as possible, and there it is, the Regery. And passes the turn back to Rodrigues. Rodrigues thinks about sending away the Scalding Tarn, and Larsen happy enough to snag a counter for his Kozzy's Trickster there, buffing it up to a 3/3 now.
And Thiago does get his mana ready to be able to terminate and play other black spots in the same turn if needed.
So let's see how he navigates his next turn here. He's got a nearly full grip, Terminate amongst it, and I can see an island in there as well. And what looks like a freshly drawn Vendilion Click. Mountain up in the mix. So again, a land-heavy hand for Rodrigues as well as Larsen here. But Rodrigues slightly ahead on board with the 5/5. But
yes, and also favored if both players flat out a little bit. Rodrigues is the one that wants the game to go as long as possible.
And here is the classic V-click in your draw step. Seeing Silvergill Adept, Master of Waves, Ghost Quarter. And away goes the Master of Waves. So Larsen will be hoping for a Merfolk card here that he can reveal to the Adept.
He might even resolve a 2-mana card for once. Hasn't been too lucky with that.
So Rodrigues just checking with the judge what's exactly the state of affairs here. After having sent that Master of Waves below decks, Larsen's drawn a mystery card. Bit of remonstrating going on with the judge as we see exactly how this plays out. As you mentioned, Zimon, certainly the Grixis deck is favoured if the game goes long. But if Larsen can string together some draws here, especially off the back of a Silvergill Adept, we see Terminate here, still presumably in the draw step of Larsen. And as Silvergill Adept enters the fray, I can tell you that Przemysl Konitsky has won his quarter-final over Hans Lundqvist, so the Death and Taxes list is out of the top 8, Zimon, and we do have at least one Merfolk deck going at it in the semis. Mero Regery that was terminated, immediately replaced by another one in addition to Silvergill Adept, ensuring the cards keep flowing for Larsen here. Rodrigues getting on the front foot. In comes the 5/5, in comes the 3/1.
That's an attack for 8 with Larsen now on 11. And Thiago is ready to deploy Creeping Tar Pit, so the same attack is threatening lethal unless Gurmag Angler gets blocked.
Some evasive threats here on Rodrigues' side. And here's Larsen with an all-out attack.
I did not take the Ghost Quarter into account, which has now been tapped, but there might be another one, in Larsen's hand. So Creeping Tar Pit actually not threatening much on this battlefield.
So Larsen on the front foot in a very aggressive posture, and with the Ghost Quarter to take care of that creeping tar pit, is going to live to see another turn unless Rodrigues has something special here.
Larsen quite punished Rodrigues' aggressive attack there. He didn't have a Lord, he didn't have Island Walk, so he just got in with his 2 power creatures and quite successfully dealt 6 points to Thiago. I'm wondering if he regrets that attack now.
Another result from Table 4, we have Marcio Calvajo playing off against Branko Neyring. Neyring, of course, from Belgium, and it is the Portuguese who has got up in game number 1. However, Marcio Calvajo playing Jund, beating Grixis Delver in the first game.
Thiago, with his mana leak, might be dead to a top-decked Island Walk granting Lord here. Has Larsen done it again?
Very interesting position here. Larsen has earned his stripes time and time again this weekend with canny play and sending those creatures confidently forth to battle, backed up more or less single-handedly by the Ghost Quarter in his hand, and Rodrigues forced to ship the turn. Larsen at the top of his library. It's a Mero Regery.
Not quite the right Lord here. Thiago also considered attacking with Creeping Tar Pit to force the activation of the Ghost Quarter so that his mana leak would do more than it does now.
So Larsen with the Seachrome Coast in hand, unfortunately not able to pay for that mana leak. No way, no how.
He has 3 mana.
The Mutavault, of course, hiding out there in the front, tricking all of us, Simon, except you.
Not all of us.
Not all of us, says Dr. Simon Gertzen.
Not Christoffer Larsen either.
No. Well and truly on top of things here. Christoffer Larsen knows what's up.
And this is where not having that Ghost Quarter would have actually made a difference. Did Larsen not play the Lamb?
No, he's kept the Seachrome Coast in hand here.
I mean, you've just dealt with the mana leak, but could have actually played that.
Larsen with another look at the top card of his library, and he finds what seems to be a Merfolk of the Master of the Pearl Trident, tapping down the Gurmag Angler, and with islands abound in Rodrigues' on Rodrigues' battlefield, he doesn't have a way to block these Merfolk, and there you go, Christoffer Larsen pulls it out of thin air, a victory for the Dane. Congratulations indeed, Christoffer Larsen, a well-fought battle resulting in him making his way to the semis. Thiago Rodrigues there, scarcely able to believe it after
that was a crazy game.
After a very, very staggered start for the Dane, he managed to pull it together. So well done indeed. Very impressive play there. We mentioned before, Simon, his supreme confidence, his self-belief has propelled him to excellence in this tournament, and I think that really reflects his skill here.
He saw his lines. He saw how to punish Rodrigues' attack. He was always threatening to just top deck that Island Walking Lord, which ultimately won the game.
Yeah, and I mean, with 8 of them in the deck, he had a good chance at doing so. As we move over now to Table 2, congratulations once again to Christoffer Larsen, but it's time to check in now with our second match here. And it is between Arno Hockamiller and Steve Hatto. We've got another Grixis list lined up here. However, Simon, it is Grixis Twin this time. Steve Hatto there on the right-hand side of your screen. You can see him there playing Scapeshift. Scapeshift flying a little bit under the radar in recent times, Simon, but obviously still with the goods to put up the numbers. Looking over this Grixis Twin list, seems to be pretty standard here, although we do only have the one Pestamite accompanying the 4 Deceiver Exarchs. Apart from that, as you'd expect, 3 copies of Splinter Twin, but 4 copies of Snapcaster Mage, 4 Lightning Bolt, 4 Remand, a Colligan's Command with another one in the sideboard, only 2 in the 75, Simon.
Well, that still counts, right?
Still counts.
Steve Hatto is playing Scapeshift, and that's pretty much the version you're used to. His one specialty is one main deck Pyroclasm, not relevant in this matchup, and certainly not in the deck after sideboarding, I would guess. Now, he does play 2 Peer Through Depths. He was very sad that Dig Through Time was not legal anymore, but that's what we have to work with. Now, in the sideboard, I'm going to look if there's anything particular against Grixis Twin. you can definitely go for more counter magic, 2 negates and a counter flux. You have a Vendilion Clig and Back to Nature. Those are all contenders. I do have to say, I don't hate Inferno Titan either, just as a surprise card to catch somebody off guard. Of course, you have to be careful not to be caught by the combo, by the twin combo, which is really difficult to resolve against Scapeshift, though.
That's true. Yes, it's with the amount of permission that this Teemo deck has, it's they're often in a good position to capitalize on this sort of thing. And the Scapeshift deck is characterized as being a combo deck, but I think it may be more accurate to say that it's a control deck at heart with a combo finish.
It's a control deck that wants to delay the game, that wants to control the board, or at least control the clock that the opponent has on you, and then ultimately you play a Scapeshift, a one card combo, really, killing almost all decks in the format.
So while there's a delay in getting Game 3 underway between Hockenmüller and Hatto, we're going to check in on Table 4 here. It's Marcio Calvajo on the left-hand side of your screen, and he's up against Branko Nainrich. These guys are tied up at 1-1, I believe. I know that Calvajo took out the first game here, and you can see he's playing Jund, opening things up with an Inquisition of Kozilek. His opponent is playing Grixis Delver, so the third of the Grixis colors, the third of the Grixis decks in the top 8 here, in the hands of the Belgian.
And Branko had to mulligan down to 6, was only holding Mana Leak and Lightning Bolt, and the Mana Leak got Inquisition. So if Marcio has strong follow-ups here, he's going to pull far ahead.
Now, we had a quick look over Calvajo's deck list, and he's lacking the traditional 2-drop of Dark Confidant in his list, foregoing it with other things instead. And as we see Scavenging Ooze eaten immediately by a Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, Marcio is playing 2 Tassigurs. That is certainly a reason for less Dark Confidence. Also, Huntmaster of the Felds in the main deck. He has 2 Kitchen Finks as well. So I think it's just a bit of metagaming. He realized that Dark Confidence is not where you want to be in a format where that really has not a lot of issues killing 1 and 2 toughness creatures. Even 3 toughness creatures aren't that great, to be honest. But then we're in the Lightning Bolt territory.
Mm-hmm. But it is interesting how you mentioned 1 and 2 toughness creatures, 2 toughness especially, under siege from Kolaghan's command as well.
Yes, and that's where Kitchen Finks and Scavenging Ooze trade off rather favorably compared to Dark Confidant.
Here's Tarmogoyf. So already the Tarmogoyf a 2-3, and now a 3-4, thanks to that Scalding Tarn. Nairnik finds a basic island. Not exactly the start I imagine he'd be after with a Grixis Delver list. The Delver list being of a very aggressive bent, Zimon playing Young Pyromancers and Snapcaster Mages and Delver of Secrets, of course, but also has the top end that you'd come to expect in these colours in Gurmag Angler and Tassiger the Golden Fang.
No, Branko's 6-card hand was weak to begin with and got plucked apart by Marcio's discard spell. And even if he finds a Delver now, it's just so much less scary than on turn 1.
Calvajo is going to go hunting as well. Get one of his jewels out. This Jund deck is very impressive for its raw power here. We're not in the business of synergy when we're playing Jund. We're just playing some of the best cards that are available in the colour, or more or less the best cards that are available in the colours, and hoping that quality will overcome tricky synergy or anything else here.
Yeah, coupled with the 6 discard spells for 1 mana. This is just a deck full of power. Marcio's playing a surprising high number of one-offs, but also the 4 Liliana of the Veil, just as a way to generate more of that.
3 damage comes across from the Tarmogoyf. And here's a Treetop Village to finish things off for Calvajo. Ships it back to the Belgian. There's another land. I think that's a deprive in hand, and we're going to see a Gurmag Angler here deployed. So, Angler might try to right the ship here a little bit. And with a deprive in hand, the Belgian has a bit of a pressure valve.
The deprive is going to grow the Tarmogoyf again. So that's interesting. If you counter Liliana of the Veil here, you put an instant and a Planeswalker into the graveyard, turning the Tarmogoyf into a 5/6. Just strong enough to attack into Gurmag Angler. If that's what you want.
Well, let's see what Calvajo can pull together here.
I think I like an aggressive line because if the Gurmag Angler attacks back, then you even have Treetop Village to get in. You only really get punished if there is also a Tasigur waiting for you, which is highly unlikely.
Well, we see him ship the turn. That deprived rather obviously telegraphed by the 2 islands staying untapped there. The savvy player will know what's up.
No, it's possible that Marcio is only playing around Mana Leak at this point.
Also true.
He can't beat every single piece of counter magic. Although he has quite a lot of board control and value cards after sideboarding. Marcio has Thrak Tusks, Outpost Siege, Olivia Voldaren, Drown in Sorrow. A lot of ways to put pressure on his Grixis Delver opponent.
Drown in Sorrow, a pretty good one as well, especially against a card like Young Pyromancer. Here's Deprive, though, targeting Liliana of the Veil. So that exact line that Zimon mentioned before, Marcio playing around Mana Leak, but also now his Tarmogoyf being made huge into a 5/6 here. So Zimon with his characteristic prescience here. Dismember going to take care of the Gurmag Angler anyway, or at least attempt to. We're going to head back to our match in just a few, but we've got Steve Haddo in the middle of a mulligan at this stage, so that game 3, still hasn't quite got underway. Down comes the Steam Vents for the Belgian. And a Mana Leak to take care of that Dismember. So a 5/6 Tarmogoyf, as Zimon Gertzen mentioned. And Marcio Calvajo, rather satisfyingly, in the position where all of the cards in his graveyard have different types, except for the 2 lands there.
He didn't even have to cast the Dismember because his Tarmogoyf was already a 5/6. So he did allow his opponent to get some value off of the Mana Leak there, but he's still very far ahead.
Calvajo down to 7 now. Well, sorry, 13 now with the Angler attack. And Treetop Village is going to join Tarmogoyf in hitting the red zone.
Yeah, punishing the attack by the Angler.
As we head back now to our original match, we might check in with the result there before too much longer, but Steve Haddo is off to the races here after a mulligan to 6 there, starting things off with Valakut the Molten Pinnacle. Hockamilla is going to go down to 18 in order to cast an Inquisition of Kozilek. And he's going to see Haddo's hand, which contains Secure Tribe Elder, Search for Tomorrow, Counterflux, and Remand. And we just had it confirmed that Marcio Calvajo has won the match against Branko Nairnik there. So the Portuguese will be featured in the semi-finals facing the Merfolk deck.
Steve Haddo, after his mulligan, had to keep a hand without green sources. So now he will most likely not be able to ramp up very quickly, which isn't the absolute key in this matchup. But of course, if Hockamilla sees this hand, he might just decide to not cast any spells so that Steve Haddo can remand. And the longer Steve Hatto is stuck on 2 lands, the easier it gets for Arnaud to win the game.
Counterflux, however, the pick there with the Inquisition. Hatto draws and has found a Misty Rainforest. Chooses to play it. And plays a Sakura Tribe Elder. Going to go and get himself a breeding pool here.
This is great for Steve. He now actually has a good shot at out-manaing his twin opponent, and then he's going to be the one representing answers to the combo. Whereas Arnaud knows that in the long term, the Scapeshift deck will out-mana him so badly that countering a lethal Scapeshift becomes more and more difficult.
A lot of shuffling going on here. But this is the very last game of the quarterfinal, so once this one comes to a conclusion, we'll have the semis on their way. Hockamiller with a Serum Visions, revealing 2 copies of Remand on top of his library. You can see Colligan's Command, Deceiver Exarch, Splinter Twin, and Cryptic Command in hand, along with a Scalding Tarn. So he does have the combo in hand, Simon.
Yes, and I think he really wants to develop his mana, first and foremost, because Steve Hatto is just going to be ramping up brutally quickly now that everything has been revealed. So it's not clear whether Remand is such a good choice. You might not actually be able to Remand anything until the big turn actually happens. And then Remand is not necessarily the best answer to what your opponent is up to.
So top bottom for Hockamiller here. He does have the combo but doesn't have all the lands. So interesting that he decided to keep Remand on top.
Yeah, I would have bottomed both of these Remands.
Sakura Tribe Elder comes across for 1. And here's another Misty Rainforest. So Remand in hand for Hatto, in addition to Steam Vents and Search for Tomorrow.
And that Remand is known to both players. Hockamiller had a lot to gain here from just drawing mana sources.
Hockamiller ships, all the same.
He might be able to get the Search for Tomorrow, but Steve doesn't have to play into open mana here. I do think that it's time to sacrifice Sakura Trap Elder, though, because from now on the threat of Deceiver Exarch is looming. Even if you are happy to Remand it next turn, there's not a good reason to keep attacking with the Tribe Elder, because the 1 mana might make the difference between winning and losing.
And the 1 damage certainly probably isn't going to here. But no, Hatto choosing to keep the snake around.
It is a win condition.
It is a win condition. Yeah, Hockamiller on a 16-turn clock. Watch out, buddy. It's coming for you. Away goes the fetch. Hockamiller's going to find himself another land here. I agree with your assessment, though, Simon. I think both of those Remands should have gone below decks, to be honest. Because in this position, if he can put enough pressure on his opponent with his Deceiver Exarchs, having the Splinter Twin in hand. Here we have the Exarch. Hatto's going to cast Remand, naturally.
And Hatto knew this was happening, or was at least very aware that this is something to be aware of in the Grixis Twin deck. No, yeah, he does have his opponent down to 12. The damage does add up here, slowly but surely.
Hokumula draws another Deceiver Exarch, so no land so far.
Yeah, not finding a land by now is just backbreaking.
He wants to get in a position where he can just go Deceiver Exarch, untap twin, and
yes,
that
but
isn't going to happen.
But do you just slam the twin into 5 open mana from the Escape Shift deck?
You do not.
I mean, you can, but I would advise it.
Main phase Deceiver Exarch here. And away goes the Sukuru Tribe Elder. So Hatto getting on the Gertsen level here.
Now that there's a 1/4 blocker, the beatdown has been stopped. This allows Steve to actually cast the Search for Tomorrow that Hokumula knows about, and then most of his hand is going to be unknown to his opponent. 4, 5, 6, 7 lands. Could he go for lethal here if he's willing to run into Spell Pierce?
Does he have the Scape Shift in hand?
He just drew it.
He just drew it. Wow. All right. So, Search for Tomorrow. Search for Tomorrow, of course, puts the land into play untapped.
The problem is Steve doesn't actually have an answer to the combo, to the train combo. Of course, Hokumula doesn't know this, but if you don't have an answer, but you have a kill if your opponent doesn't have very specific answers, I like going for it here.
And it seems like he's going to do that. Here we go. So it is the Scape Shift victory, getting Hatto over the line. A blind Hail Mary, chucking it up in the sky, and he manages to get there as well. So Hokumula, not knowing the content, the top card of his library for him, very difficult. But unfortunately, for the Grixis twin player, his opponent has got there with a Scape Shift that managed to steal the game away at the very last minute. So our semi-finalists have assembled, ladies and gentlemen, as we bring it back to the booth. Riley Knight along with Simon Gertsen. And the semi-finals will be coming your way in just a tick or two.